Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Getting Down to Business and the podcast. My name is Scott Perron. I'm your host, and it is always my pleasure to try to bring you great people, great guests that will provide valuable information about business in general and particularly their business. And today is no exception. In fact, you probably will look at this gentleman and say he must be the host because he looks way, way better than I. His name is Chris Kiblin. He is the founder of Spartan Capital Group here in Sarasota. He is also a notable podcast host here in Sarasota under the Suited Warrior podcast. Chris, I want to welcome you to Getting Down to Business.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, bud. It was a pleasure most recently to get on your podcast and discuss business, something I'm always willing to do. And I think we ran overtime on that.
I think we went an hour and 20 minutes or something like that.
And it felt like 14 minutes.
Yeah,
so it was a lot of fun, but I appreciate you being here. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, who Spartan Capital is, and you know what you're bringing to Sarasota.
Okay, sure. So a little bit about my background as far as business-wise. Been in some type of lending. I don't even want to count the years, but over 25 years, I think. So started back when I'm in my early 20s in the banking world. And then quickly rose into commercial lending and then got into residential mortgages in 2011. Since then, 2011, I did mortgages, residential mortgages. And then about 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to own my own company. Because the thing is one of the things that I see that's very huge in the marketplace for residential, especially residential mortgages, is that there's a lot of, when you work for a big company or a big bank or something like that, there's a lot of overhead. And so what happens is then that overhead that they need to pay comes from what you make. So what I make, and then also makes the rates go higher because they have overhead. Well, me being a small business owner, I'm actually able to save money because I don't have all that overhead, and then get my rates down lower. That way it gives our customers a better opportunity to get a better rate. People who buy homes are very rate sensitive. And so, I wanted to do what's best for my clients. So I was like, why not just go for it and open up my own company and go that route? And so been doing that for just over 2 years now. It's turned out great. Residential mortgages were down a little bit, but they're coming back. Rates are low again. We're back in the fives on interest rates. And then also the commercial lending aspect of it. That's actually really been popping a lot lately. Seeing more and more of that grow. So a lot of people have been calling me about deals to get commercial, whether it's warehouse, buildings, and that kind of stuff.
So you were coming into the market as the market was trying to recover from the housing bubble.
Yeah.
Have you always been in the Florida market?
No. So I'm originally from Maryland. So I started up there and went through 2008, but I was more in the commercial side, which was a tough time as well. Because the thing is like, everything, all the restrictions and everything. And so kind of when I was going through that in Maryland in the commercial world, like we really didn't approve anybody. We had a very difficult time getting businesses approved. So I started getting frustrated, and I was like, this is, because, that's how I make my money is by getting deals.
Sure.
And so, and then it was like, okay, well, this isn't working. I was like, I need to switch something up. And so that's why I went into the residential part of it. So I started in 2011 through 2014 in Maryland. And then in 2014, I came down here, but I didn't jump right back into mortgages. When I moved down here, I didn't know anyone, not one person. So me and my ex-wife and my kids came down here, and we were like, all right, so starting fresh. All right. And, in order to really get business, you need to know people. And I didn't know anyone. So I took a job, went back to retail banking, lasted about 3 months, hated it. And then I got a job actually selling gym memberships, and then went to selling personal training. I was like, I got to get back into the mortgage world. So then got my license, started that, but I struggled for 2 or 3 years. Very tough. Getting my name out there. I mean, I did everything. You name it, I did it. Just trying to get my name out there. I took a Grant Cardone class, and I was an ambassador for him. And so one of the things that he has said is, if people don't know your name, how are they ever going to do business with you?
Right.
And so, and that saying is stuck in my brain ever since I went through there. So I do everything I possibly can now, whether it's the podcast, social media, events, sponsoring things, being wherever I can get my name out there so people know who I am. And so it just takes time though, because it's a relationship business.
Well, you and I both know Don Carlson, who started Tweeds and is now on his 16th or
Yeah,
17th.
yeah, he's
And
up there.
he quotes Grant Cardone a lot of times too. He said, if they don't know you, they can't flow you, right? Which means, and it's totally true, building a brand is everything in a business. It's hard to do sometimes because if you're trying to spend it with advertising only, and we talked about this on your show, you can spend your way out of dollars right away.
Right away.
And when you're competing, and a lot of times, maybe not in your field as much, I'm not sure, but in my world, we compete a lot with these private equity companies that are buying up service industries,
Right.
whether they be my trade and flooring or anything else. And they can outspend you. They have deep pockets,
You're right.
and they actually don't mind losing money right away to try to bury other guys in the market. Essentially what Home Depot, Lowe's, and these guys did in the building supply business
Right.
back in the early 90s when I got in. You couldn't compete against them head to head. So you had to outservice them, which really wasn't that hard to do because they really didn't have their sea legs in terms of providing service. And I imagine that's a huge factor in the world of mortgages, the service level that a client receives, not just providing a great rate.
Yeah, because the thing is like there's a ton of big banks out there. There's a ton of big retail lenders out there. And the thing is like you said, is like the service, because they are so big, a lot of times the service drops off, right? And so one of the things that I realized with working with these companies is like, okay, you got all these people trying to feed these loans in, but they don't have enough back end help. So you don't have a good processor, you don't have a good assistant, or underwriters are overwhelmed. So like what will happen is the service starts dropping, right? So what you're looking for then is like, okay, well, and you can only control what you can control. And so when you don't have that control, then, you're explaining to your agents or your clients or whatever, you're trying to be like, look, I'm doing everything I can, but I can't get through underwriting or this or that. And it becomes frustrating. Right. So, because we are a very relationship driven business, whether it's with clients, especially, my customers are realtors, that's my number one customer, because they're the ones that refer me business. So, those are my ones that I really go out of my way to make sure they're taken care of and they are happy, because that could also impact future business for them. So, when you start looking at it and you start downsizing it and you do get to the smaller people, small business owners like ourselves, the service, that's where we win, right? My rates might not, they're super competitive, but there might be somebody that's cheaper every once in a while. But
they might go through a horrendous process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen to a lot of my clients, oh, they promised them this, they promised them that. And then guess what? It was all
fluff.
All fluff. They end up getting it. And then by the time they realize what was happening, it's too late. They have to close with them and they've already got them.
Well, I bought, personally 7 or 8 houses over the years, and, the mortgage process, and any time that a house is being purchased is it's personal, right? It's not only, okay, I need to have a place to live, and okay, I got credit and I've got income and all that stuff, but it's timing. It's, what's got to go through the underwriting process. One of the things I found was a unique difference in mortgage brokers. And when it comes around the next time, I will definitely call you, but the difference is what they're asking for up front. Like I had processes where, I'm a guy that, hey, give me the whole list.
Right.
What's the list of things you need? I'll give you above and beyond that, everything I can think of, so we can not do this back and forth. And some of the brokers were really good with that, and they were organized, and some of them not so much, or last minute Charlie on something that they should have asked earlier in the process. It wasn't something that wasn't available. It just, they didn't ask, and it held up the approval and the closing process, which I know the trick to all these deals is to get them closed for you, the buyer, and the realtor, right? That's where everything changes hands.
Yeah.
So I know from firsthand experience, I'm sure there's people that bought a lot more houses than I have, but I bought all different types of properties, rental, commercial, the ones we lived in, and so on, help friends, family, relatives, working with my son now, talking to him about purchasing a building for his new building business, because he's on an up and coming streak with his business, and I don't want to see him waste his money with rent if he can buy a building and pay himself the same he's paying the landlord, So tell me about that. Tell me what a person's going through these days. Cause I haven't bought a house now. We've been in ours since 2018.
Right.
So 8 years, things had to have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And is technology helping to piece those things together?
Yep. So now there's a lot more that's really kind of awesome, right? So we have automated systems now that are AI driven that will actually, once you put the application through, and it will actually determine what documentation you need, and it will actually automatically send you a list of what documents that you need. We still scrub it just to make sure that it didn't miss anything,
Sure.
so we want to make sure we got all the documents, but it does, once you finish the application process, it goes, okay, you need your W-2s, your pay stubs, or whatever else, and then it automatically sends you a list. So AI has helped with that. Also, one of the biggest things that's changed since then is you used to have to always go inside a title company and sign, right? So we are getting more technology now where actually we can have a customer sign everything online, have a notary that's sitting on the computer with you, watching you sign a document and do a electronic notary. So you don't even have to, you can do what's called a virtual closing now. And which is a lot of the clients like it. Sometimes the realtors don't really like it because then you're not really there, for the closing or whatever. But if they're not here, let's say they're in Wisconsin and they're buying a house here, I can just send everything electronically to them, and then they sign there to get the notary. So much easier.
Yeah, you don't have to coordinate travel schedules
and all that kind of stuff, right? So we can make it a lot easier on the client. Takes them like 10, 15 minutes to do a closing, as where if you come into an office and you have to sit there and sign all the documents, it could take 45 minutes to an hour.
So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about retail banking. Because, when I was a kid, and you're younger than me, but when I was a kid, being a banker was a very prestigious thing, right? And I'm not saying that it's not today, but I do see a lot of movement, personnel within the banking industry. And I do see a lot of changes. I have a close friend, whose wife was, high up level executive with a bank, been with them many years, no issues ever. And a few months ago, they just came in and eliminated her job, gave her a 6-month severance or whatever. And,
you're seeing a lot of that.
Right. And it just seems to be very volatile these days. And I imagine that technology's got a piece in that. But the old days of your relationship banking head to head with your banker, you used to go in, used to meet, you have a cup of coffee.
They knew who you were.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They knew who you were, and it was done differently. And I can remember that happening back when I was a kid, because my parents had some rental properties and a business, and they were always working with the banker on whether they were going to purchase something or develop something. And it was just so much different then. Talk a little bit about that. And is that the reason you really wanted to move forward and go back into mortgages and open your own company?
So retail lending, so there's difference, right? So you got a retail banking, which is basically if you go into a branch, and I did that. I was a teller, and then I became a platform person that opened accounts and stuff like that. And then I became a assistant manager, branch manager, area manager, and retail world, right? So back, we used to praise like you said, you'd have these relationships with those clients in that retail space, and then the thing is what's really kind of the reason why you're seeing so many eliminations of jobs is because of technology, right? They can find a better, easier, faster way now with technology for some jobs than they don't need anymore. But the thing is what really hurts banks and what you're starting to see is their brick and mortar locations. They're paying all this money to be there, right? And I can't tell you how many times I go into my bank and there's like 2 people working, and still everything's virtual. So I go in there, there's no teller, there's a machine, and I'm like punching it. There's no relationship anymore, and
I'm a Chase client, so I know what you're talking about.
So am I.
You deal with the machine. Yeah.
So I go in there and there's nobody there. And I was like, there's 2 people hiding in their office, right? They don't come out, they don't say hi, they don't talk to you. Yeah. And so, it's just like that retail aspect is going away.
Yeah.
And so you don't have that, and it's like, I remember I had a book of clients that, I touched quarterly. I would call them, say, hey, how's things going? Maybe try to set up a meeting once a year to talk to them, review their financial whatever. So it's not like that anymore, and so it's just like, well, we hope somebody comes in.
The other thing that's interesting about that, and that had it happen most recently, multiple times, just within that last 12 calendar months, you go into the bank and all of a sudden the person at the bank, and again, this is not bagging anybody. It's just a change. Now, I went in there to make an HSA deposit, and it's a local bank with regional locations. I've been with that bank now for 8 or 9 years, right? And every year come HSA deposit time. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a house savings account. So if you're in your own business, you can contribute to that, and it helps to offset the costs of the deductible items that your insurance doesn't cover. And if you put that money in there pre-tax and use it for that benefit, you don't pay the tax on that money. So it's for a lot of business owners, it's a good way to put away money you can use for medical expenses. It rolls over, it doesn't expire. And there'll be a day where you're going to need it. You're going to need that cash. So I've been using this bank now for 8 or 9 years, and I'm not going to change, but it's almost fail safe. I can go in there every year, and the person I talk to has no idea how to make this deposit. And it literally requires a form from my end. It's you're depositing it for HSA purposes. It's for this particular tax year, which is the important part, because you're getting a federal document coming back to you that goes with your tax return that says this is for that money, and for good reason, right? But everybody's looking at each other, and there's only one person in the whole branch that knows what this is, and they inevitably have to call the home office and ask them how to fill this out. So, and literally, it's happened 6 out of the last 8 years, without objection, right? And same thing with a lot of other things. When you go in the bank, you ask somebody a question. It just seems like they're only trained up to a certain level, and that's it. And everything else is done off site. And I understand from a cost perspective that that's less for the company. But boy, I don't know, I guess maybe the generations that are coming beyond us really don't care. About that. And you got your guy at Capital One, and now they're making cafes and place you can go in and use your laptop and have a cup of coffee. I'm not really sure where that's all going, but everybody seems to be moving in that arena to try to find the best Starbucks, if you will, model for banking. And although you say, these local branches or the brick and mortars are going away, I just heard of a location here off of Bee Ridge that a bank is going to open up a new branch, and they spent like $4 million on the land. Wow. So who knows? Who knows? Or maybe they just have an overabundance of money and need to build an asset. I don't know what's going on.
You're seeing some
it's
of
just
them,
different.
like I know at the Chase, because I live up in Lakewood Ranch. So like if you go to, there's the Chase that's right off of, was that 64 and Lakewood Ranch Boulevard?
Yeah.
On that
corner.
corner.
Exactly where you are.
And like you go in there and it's just it's a screen. It's machines. They don't have tellers. And so like you can't talk to anybody. But if you go to the one that's off of 70 and Lakewood Ranch, and then there's another one that's off of University in Lakewood Ranch. Those have tellers, so they're a little bit more. But like from being in that world, you just start seeing, because here's the thing about retail banking, right? Retail banking is all about deposits. That's where they make their money. So that money that they have in their accounts, they do overnight trading or whatever they do to make their money, right? They'll give you a little bit of interest, but their goal is to make interest off that deposits. It's not even really in lending. They actually, like in mortgages and stuff like that, they lose money in lending. So they don't really want to do the lending part. And it's one of the things I found out going through the process is because the thing is so like most banks want the A+ client, right, to do lending.
Of course.
And they want the best credit,
they want
best
to give
job.
money to somebody who doesn't really need money.
Right. So, and that was the thing that drove me nuts when I was a commercial lender. I was like, okay, so you only want me to go after the people who don't need money, but the people who do need money, we can't approve them. I'm like, okay, so
counterintuitive.
Yeah. So, you see that. And so the only reason they even do loans or mortgages and stuff like that is because of the fact they know they need to have that service, right? Because they, for those people that want to come into the bank, because they've been banking there for 20 years, they feel like they need to go get their auto loan or their mortgage or whatever, right? But what you're starting to see now, especially in the commercial lending piece of it, a lot of big banks are getting away from doing commercial lending. They're not even doing it anymore because it's becoming too risky. So what happens is I've become friends with a lot of these commercial bankers that when they can't do a deal, they call me and say, hey, is this something that you might be able to do? Because I have different options than they have. And we're not as, conservative when it comes to these types of loans.
They'll take a little more risk.
Yeah,
risk
so we take more risk. And,
to make money, you got to take a risk. I don't care what industry you're in. You got to take a risk,
And so they just don't want it. The banks don't want it. They want deposits, but things have definitely changed in that banking arena. That's why you're seeing a lot more. I mean, if you really go and look at successful loan officers in this area, almost none of them work for a bank, like a big bank. There's some smaller banks that are here that do well. But most of the people that I know that do well, they're either a broker like me, or, they own their own company, or they are with a broker, or they are, small, right? So you don't see the big names out here and that kind of stuff. So like you don't see Chase loan officers, and you don't see Bank of America loan officers and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't think I've ran into a Bank of America loan officer ever since I've been here.
So to kind of teach the viewers a little bit, where's the money coming from for these mortgages? Who's backing these?
So,
Like, where's the primary dollars coming from?
So if you go residential, you got Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, right? So those are basically, they're not government entities, but they might as well be. Because what happens is when you do a mortgage, right? So let's say you come to me and we go and we fund it, but then we turn around and sell it to Fannie Mae. So Fannie Mae is the main person, like for conventional financing. So then Fannie Mae will give us, okay, we'll sell it to them. They'll take over the loan, right? So it takes it off our books. We get our money back so we can lend to other people. But then a lot of times what will happen, depending on who the lender is or what's going on, that lender will service the loan, right? So many people think, okay, like a big company I use is UWM, United Wholesale Mortgage. They're the biggest broker lender in the country. So, but they will take it and then they will then service it for Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae gives them 10% of the payment. So they'll get 10% of that payment for collecting that payment, but then they give the rest of it to Fannie Mae to make the payment. So that's how that works. But so you got Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are two conventional. You have FHA, and then you have VA, you have USDA. They're all the backers for it, right? But then there's a lot of other equity firms that will do other special what we call non-QM, so non-qualified mortgages. And what they do is they'll go in and do, like, we do something called a DSCR loan, which is called a debt service ratio loan. So what that is that's for people who want to buy an investment property, right? But most of these people don't show income or a lot of income. So what we do is we go in and we say, okay, as long as you got a 660 credit score or above and you put 20% down, the way we figure out your income is we'll go out and send an appraiser out there, appraise your house, but also see what the rent comparables are for that. So if you can get, let's say, $2,000 a month for rent and your monthly payment's $2,000, then that's what we call a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. A 1-to-1 ratio means that you're good. So if something should ever happen and we need to foreclose on that property because you weren't making payments, right? Then we know that we can at least get our rent payment to
cover the debt service.
Cover the debt, right? It's an easy loan. You don't need to have a tenant or anything in it before you close. We just want to know that we're covered, right? So, and one of the things is like we also do some other lending, but these are all investment. We won't do it on primary homes because primary homes, if you have to foreclose on them, are such a difficult task. It could take years to evict somebody for a primary home, whereas an investment property, you can have them out within 3 months. Okay. So you can get them quick because they're not living there. It's not their primary residence. So we can turn it and get our money back real quick. So those type of loans, and
that's the reason a lot of people move to Florida. It's because certain protections on your homestead, and being able to take your home away from you, even if you have trouble financially, it's more difficult.
So I know, you talk about property taxes, I know there's a lot of talk about Florida eliminating primary home taxes, right? Either that or reducing them. So in my opinion, which, I don't want to get too much into politics, but the thing is like the thing that I like if they do it, there's multiple things to look at this, right? But if they did get rid of our home taxes, right? The taxes on our property for a house that we live in, I like it because the thing is like, then you actually own your land. You own your property. If you don't pay your taxes, they can come and take your house. Right. So after so long, they're going to be like, okay, you either need to pay your taxes.
And that happens to a lot of people.
And if you don't, somebody else can actually step in and pay it.
Buy your taxes.
And pay it. And then they own your house.
Right.
Because you didn't pay your taxes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But it happened to a gentleman that worked for us. He didn't even realize he was in arrears. Somebody went up and maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but they bought up their tax debt. And then they just said, okay, now give us triple and we'll let you have it back. They didn't want the property. They just wanted to triple up on their money. And now this poor kid had to go through hell and creation to find the money to pay this guy. Otherwise, he's out of his house. Yep. And this guy owns it. They didn't want to move. They didn't want to leave their home. So it's crazy.
It's crazy.
A lot of times just being uninformed. And that's one of the reasons we do these podcasts.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that sense, right, I like the fact because I own my home, right? Nobody can take it from me. Because if you have a tax on it, you never really own it. right?
Right.
The government still owns you
Right.
in some ways,
Yes.
So it depends on how you want to look at it politically, because then people will be like, well, where are you going to get that money from? And that kind of thing. So that's where the debate starts coming from, right? So, which I think the state of Florida, from the research I've done and seen and everything else, it's easy to make up the difference. It's not as big as everybody thinks it is. But that's one of the biggest things for me personally. Like, if something should happen, let's say like, I'm 80 years old and I'm on such a fixed income, taxes keep going up, or if you live in a condo or something like those condo fees get ridiculous.
Health challenges.
Yeah. So it's like, if you, and then you're telling me, okay, all right, you owe $7,000 in property taxes or $10,000 in property taxes, but you're only getting a minimal, you're making like $15,000 a year for Social Security. How are you going to pay that?
Right.
So like
you have to have
that's
somebody rescue you, or you're out of your house.
So like that's kind of my thinking behind it. It's just like, especially as, we are especially our area is a much older generation, and I see it because I've done loans for, I had one guy who's 91, and so you can't discriminate on anybody as far as doing loans. So it doesn't matter their age. They could be 100 and I can still do a loan for them, so, but the thing is it just gets tough on them, especially when you have condo associations that have to have their foundation checked now because of what happened in Miami. So like all these condo associations that have structural buildings, depending on how old they are, they all have to be redone and re-engineered, and then that all costs money. So then everybody's condo fees go up.
Yeah, it's an assessment to everybody. Yeah.
So like now, you got this poor old lady who's on a fixed Social Security income. Her husband passed away and she can't afford it anymore.
Right. And she got to move from her home. Yeah.
And where's she going to go?
Well, these are all interesting subjects. We're going to take a quick break. We have Chris Kiblin, who is the CEO of Spartan Capital Group here in Sarasota and also the host of the Suited Warrior podcast. We'll be right back on Getting Down to Business in just a few moments. Hey, welcome back to the Getting Down to Business podcast. My name is Scott Perron. I have the wonderful, handsome, previous serviceman for the United States Services and owner of Spartan Capital Group here with us today, Chris Kiblin. And you probably just saw some great images of Chris. I threw in a bunch of great pictures he provided, and he's known about town as a good dresser. He's a sharp cat, and as you can tell, he's got a great personality, and he's feeding us some terrific information about the mortgage business, banking, and other things to do with finance, things that will help the viewers who want to pay attention and listen. Let's kind of dive back in this. So tell me a little bit about you being in the service, because as I told you before, I'm always very respectful and very grateful of those of you that went off and served our country. My dad did it in Korea. My uncles in World War II, some in Vietnam, my cousins stuff. I didn't do that. Looking back, I wished I had, because it's really an honor. But tell us a little bit about your military career, and I know your sons kind of followed in your footsteps.
Yeah, so I wasn't the best student in school. I hated school. I went to school to socialize. As you can see, I like to talk. So like I would go there and just hang out with my friends, and I got by. I mean, I wasn't a bad student. I mean, I was like a C average student, but like my grades really weren't good enough to go to college, and I didn't have a lot of money to go to college. So all my friends, when we graduated, they all went off to college. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? I don't want to stay at home. I was like, so trying to figure things out. And I'm like, so I started really thinking about it, and it was like, and I was 18, and I was like, and something inside me just told me I needed more discipline to grow up.
Little structure,
right? So there's something in me. And my grandfather, he was a master sergeant, which is the highest you can go. I got an uncle who's a master sergeant. A warrant officer was another uncle of mine. Both my grandfathers were in the Army. So everybody in my family was Army. So I'm like, maybe I'll join the Army. So I decided, I was like, all right, let me go talk to the recruiter. Went and talked to the recruiter. And they're like, they kind of gave me a bit breakdown. And of course I had to do like a test and everything, to see what I could do. The one thing about me though is, so I decided to join, but and like there's some things like you say you kind of wish you did. So I grew up restoring cars with my stepdad. And so I knew a lot about mechanics of cars and different things, how to change, engines and transmissions and everything else, right? So I was like, why not just be a mechanic? I already know it. I'll go in, I'll blow it away, right? So I kind of wish I would have done something different, but because that was what I knew, I was like, well, I'll just go and do something.
You're comfortable with that.
Yeah. So I was just like, I wish I would have learned something that could possibly, it might have changed my trajectory of what I do now. You look at me now, you'd be like, you worked on cars? I mean, I'm always dressed in my suit and everybody knows me by my suits and that kind of thing. But no, I used to get down and dirty and do everything. Change brakes, change Cadillac converters. I knew how to fix head gaskets and everything else. I know how to shave them down. And so like I learned a lot. And so,
it's very good critical thinking stuff. Mechanic work is, you got to think how to fix a problem.
Yeah. So, and I do that with my job. So, I, cause you always are looking, okay, this didn't work, but how do I fix it? And so really I went in for the discipline part of it. Right. And all my family went in. And so that's what made me join the military. And I wanted to get that discipline and get it so that way, like because I knew they were going to shape me up, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
If you don't, you're out. And I was like, and I wasn't giving up. We had people who dropped out in basic training and even in schooling and stuff like that. And so, but I wasn't going to give up. And when I first went, when you see all these movies and how bad basic training is, I was like, I was nervous. I was like, I do not want to screw up. And so, the thing is so I was doing well. And actually I was a squad leader for a while, but I have two left feet when it comes to try to dance or try to do anything. And I couldn't get the cadence down and with your footsteps. So they demoted me because I couldn't do the steps. And so, but then I finally caught on and got through it all and kind of just glared at the person next to me and the side of my eye, just kind of followed them. But I knew it was just learning that discipline there. And really what it did was it helped set me up for my career. After I got out, I went into insurance, did that for like 6 months. And then because I had my life and health license, that's when I got into banking. And because I was just like, you know what? I was like, what do I do now? I was like, well, I like money.
It's funny you say, being good in school. My father graduated from high school and went into the service because he got drafted. But prior to that, one of his contemporaries, which was his nephew, he had much older brothers and sisters, big family. And so one of his older brothers had a stepson through a second marriage. His name was Paul Smith, and we called him Smitty. He was my cousin, but he was my dad's age. Right?
Okay.
And Smitty ended up going into the service because he got in a little trouble as a kid. And, just rambunctious or whatever, and really wasn't a student. And so he goes and enlists, and he ends up meeting with a guy while he's in the service who ends up getting a commissioned OCS.
Oh, wow.
And so here goes a guy who really didn't really have a path, and he was ultra smart and just a daredevil, paratrooper, airborne, did the whole nine. So he found his lane, and he retired a lieutenant colonel. Right after 20 some odd years, he met his wife in Thailand, and one by one brought all of her family over after they got married. They had 4 children, one of which went to West Point.
Oh,
like
wow.
You would never see this, but all that to say, the service sometimes gives you that start that puts you on a lane that takes you to where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you, like so many people, that you recognize I need something, you go out and get it. You got to go through a lot of work to get it. You got to, listen to orders and basic and all that stuff. But I think it's really important. I'd like to see more and more kids do that because I think so many of them, especially today, don't have that guidance or don't have that discipline and don't really realize how hard they need to work and how hard they can work, like what they're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of kids realize what they're capable of today, men and women both.
Yeah.
And if you put them on that lane and show them a couple of wins, they can really do well.
That's why, when my son came to me and he was struggling, right? He got out of high school and he was like me. He hated school. He was an okay student, And so, he graduated and everything else, and he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. And actually, he did a little bit of this. He went and he was like my videographer for a long time. I sent him to school for videography and everything else. And so he went to a trade school, but he just didn't like it.
So wasn't this thing.
But he realized it wasn't his thing, right? And so like he's bouncing back and forth trying to figure out what to do. And then he came to me. He's like, I've been thinking about joining the military. I'm like, okay. And so I was hoping to go Army, but he went Coast Guard. And so like the thing is that he said he realized what it did for me, and he hoped that it would do the same thing for him. And so he's like, I watched you and built what you've built and done what you've done. And, and we are very similar in that aspect. So now he joined the Coast Guard. And when he got into the Coast Guard, they sent him to, it's up in, I'm trying to think of the name of it. I think it's up in North Carolina. I can't remember the city, but it's so they have the biggest boat, and I don't remember which ship it was, but it was one at Hamilton. I think it's called the Hamilton ship or something like that. But it's the biggest ship the Coast Guard has, and they would go out and he went out on two deployments, looking for drug
busts,
and that kind of thing. They would board other ships. And I'm like, this is my son. I was like, before he went into the Coast Guard, I was like, you're doing what? Yeah. And so he went out and he's doing this stuff. And they arrested people. He locked them up, and they had a jail on the ship. And then they would collect all this, especially cocaine. That was like their number one thing. And so they would collect all this, and then they would just and they get tips and where this was, where that was. Then they send a helicopter out to go see it and that kind of stuff. And now he is doing so well. He got transferred to DC, where he works their main headquarters, and he also works alongside them in the Pentagon.
Oh, nice.
So you talk about somebody who, same thing, right?
How old is he?
He's 27.
Oh, he's just a kid. With all that experience already.
And so he's learned a lot. And so, and he's gone through the things, and so he's moved up very quickly. I think he's already a first sergeant, and he's only been in for 2 years, a little over 2 years.
That's
so
awesome.
He's been doing all his schooling and everything else, and he wants to, So, and then I asked him the other day, or probably a couple weeks ago, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay in? Are you going to get out? Because with now the way the system works is like for him, he had to do 4 years of active duty, 2 years of active reserves, and then another 2 years of inactive reserves. That's the way they sign people up now, trying to keep them in longer.
As long as they can, yeah.
So
because that's so few coming.
Yeah. So it's not like it used to be. So, a lot of people, like a lot of the kids don't want to go in. I have a friend of mine who was a recruiter. He said their goal was, 1 or 2 a month. That's basically all they can get. And he's like, you had to fight for those 1 or 2. And so,
amazing.
So like the thing is like, I'm proud of the way that he has turned out because of it, and the service really did help him. And so it helped him, it helped me, and one of the things is like, you hear so many people, and I'm not knocking college, but you hear so many people who say, well, you need a college degree, you need this or you need that. And the thing is like, not everybody's made for college. Right. And there is a lot of successful people who've not gone to college.
They can spend 4 years wasting time and money and come out of it with absolutely nothing but a party schedule.
Yeah. So it's like, and I know people, I'm going to throw her under the bus a little bit, but my ex-wife, she had her master's degree in teaching. She had her bachelor's degree in science, and all these, and some like a minor degree in biology and stuff like that. And she's a personal trainer, but you don't even need a degree.
Didn't follow those.
Yeah. So it's like, so a lot of times
a lot of education, but not put to use.
Yeah. So, you see that, you see a lot of people who go to college, 4 years of college, and then they're like, okay, or they can't get a job in that field or something like that. So it's not always that way. And so like, there is people out there like me, other people that I know that didn't go the college route. There's a lot of,
just fine.
And well, I know a lot of people who went to service, plumbing or air conditioning,
sure.
Mechanics.
Got a good trade.
Good trade. And then before you know it, a lot of them were, mechanics, and then they decided to put up their own place, then they have multiple locations.
So let's talk a little bit about building business, because that's my thing. That's this whole show's about.
Right.
And you talked in detail about what you're doing, structure to get there and all that. Talk about the importance of what we talked about in your show, belly to belly marketing, getting relationships built, and how that is so important for both of us in our line of work. And it's something that I think no matter what industry you're in, to some degree, you need to have that being done. And that's where there's a missing piece of the puzzle where folks try to buy their way into that. And that's not always something you can purchase.
So I'm a huge believer in relationship building, right? Getting to know the people I work with, getting to know whether it's attorneys, whether it's financial advisors or people like you, business owners. Because the thing is like I firmly believe in our market, and it will always be this way for anything as far as what I do, and probably even for you and like a lot of other people, is it's still a relationship business, right? You build those relationships because you're building trust between each other. So what happens is like, because you're not going to get a deal with them right away, right?
Right.
You're not going to get something from them. They need to get to know you and trust you. So you just keep doing that, right? So I'm always out trying to network. I'm always out trying to sponsor. I'm involved in a lot of different charities. I'm involved in a lot of different things. It does take up a lot of my time. But the thing is what it does is it also like, look, I'm giving back, whether it's for a charity, right? So, or something else, or part of me doing the podcast is for me to give back to business owners, right? It's a great way for me to share the content at no cost to them. And so we can get the word out about your business or whoever's business we're talking about, and so, and then I get to know who you are. And so, get to know more of your detail. One of the things that I love about podcast is the fact is you and I mean, we can go grab a beer, but we don't talk in depth about what you do or how you do things. And so you don't see that, right? So many people only look at where you're at today. They don't know your struggles.
The journey. Yeah, they don't know the journey.
And they don't see that. They don't see what I went through, like how bad I struggled when the first couple of years I was here, I was eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right?
Right.
Because we didn't have the money. I mean, we barely had the money to pay our rent, and, because I wasn't getting enough deals to close. So that's why, people were like, oh, eventually mortgages will be taken over by the internet and everything will be internet based. No, it won't. Because the thing is like agents, customers still believe in that relationship. They still believe in what you're telling them. They want a live person. They want to talk to you. They want to see you.
Especially something as personal as buying your home.
So it's important to them, and so, that's the thing. So, getting your name out there and making sure that they see you, and so one of the things, and then try to find a way to separate yourself from your competition, right? A little bit. So, and what I mean by that is like, and it could be something as silly as me wearing a nice suit, right? People recognize me in my suits.
Absolutely.
Everybody, they joke with me. They make comments.
Yeah,
right?
No, it's good. It's a brand. It's a brand you're building.
And so that's part of the reason I do what I do.
And to interject there, that I met Don Carlson. That very thing happened. Over the years I'd had suits and whatever, but I started buying some custom clothes. And Florida wasn't known for dressing up, but I'll tell you something. When you walk down the street, and it's not pointing the finger at me, but automatically you pick up. Wow, look. Olga's a great example.
Yep.
The way she dresses, dressed to the nines. She looks great all the time. You dress in those suits all the time. It's your marker, and it identifies you, and it's cool. So Don has really brought cool back to dressing up. It doesn't have to all be online. You can go into a shop. You can have a great experience.
Yep.
He's got a little bar set up there.
That's awesome.
The guy consults with you. It's really an experience. And yeah, it's a few dollars more. But investing in a wardrobe, if you're a business person, or even for your casual life, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
People spend money in a lot worse ways than to buy clothes. So,
and if you take care of them, they will last.
They'll last for a while.
And so the thing is like I've got suits that are 6 years old. It's still like they're brand new.
Yeah.
I take them to the dry cleaners and I make sure they're well taken care of. And so the thing is like when you.
But
see
you probably
them,
do that with everything you own, right? And that's my nature.
Yeah.
Like I have vehicles.
Yeah.
I don't want to go out in my car being dirty, right? And I had a truck I just sold that was 10 years old. And the guy said, I can't believe this thing's in 2016. I go, well, I take care of my stuff.
Yeah.
There's no point in me spending all this money on something and then just beating it to death. And again, when you're a kid, you do that.
Yep.
Or you don't have any money,
you don't
do
have
that.
money.
But when you get older and you can appreciate things and you don't want to be turning it over and you want it to have value. Like I bought a truck for $30,000 in 2000. I'm going to say that was 2018. and I just turned it over for $16,000. I lost $12,000 or $14,000 in 10 years almost, and put 100,000 miles on it, right? Try doing that. Now, I'm not pumping my chest up. It was worth both sides of that, right? But the guy who bought it was just like, I've been looking for this truck. He's a landscaper. Been looking for this truck. I have one. It's got 250,000 miles on it. Yours has half the miles, and it's in better condition than mine was when I bought that, and it's just because you take care of it. And so I think you put value to anything that you spend good money on, and our kids I shouldn't say our kids, my parents were drumming that into our heads when we were kids, don't waste money, don't waste food, turn the lights off, things like that. Where we laugh at that a little bit today because leaving your LED light on doesn't cost that much anymore.
5 cents.
But back in the day, I could leave $35 extra to my kids if I turn the lights off. But it was just building an idea in your head about not wasting where you're spending good money. And that's why I laugh at things like DoorDash and Uber Eats. Like they're spending $30 to get something that if you get up off your tush and go and get it, it's $9. I'll never understand it, but it's created a business. It provides a need. It provides a service.
It's a multi-billion-dollar business.
Yeah, and if people want to pay for it, God bless them. It's not my place to tell them where to spend their money.
No, I totally agree. So I think building a brand is very important. Like my podcast and my
talk a little bit about Suited Warrior because
So like the thing is like so Spartan Capital, right? That's my business, and then also but I wanted to make it to. So my original podcast that I started was called Real Hustle, and Real Hustle I started that probably about 5 years ago, and we had just about before I ended it had about 50 episodes on it, and it was doing well. But then I gotten sick. And then once I got sick, I decided to rebrand because I wanted to make it something more towards Spartan Capital and kind of align everything. So if you look at my stuff, all my stuff looks very similar, like the way that I brand. It's red, black, and white, So everything that I do, it has those colors in it. So, and I kind of keep it very similar. So like they know my branding, so when people see it, right? So they either know me as Suited Warrior or and if anything, most of them know me as I have people come up to me and they'll be like, they don't even know my name, but they know Spartan.
Right.
You're a Spartan, right?
Right.
So like, it's just because of the branding, right?
Well, you become a guy thing. I always tell people, how many times somebody say, I need this, that, or the other thing. And you go, I got a guy or I got a girl that does this. And you want to use that person. And people don't realize the power. I was watching John Taffer and there was a short on YouTube. And, he does a lot of these things with the restaurant bar rescue and that kind of stuff, which is all really good, but it's theatrical. But he was in this short where he was basically just talking about how he markets to get a client. And he said, in the world of higher end restaurants, it can cost as much as $1,000 to get a new client for a restaurant. Yeah. And he goes, so what we do is when you come in the very first time, we put a red napkin down. If we know that you're brand new, like we ask you, hey, you've ever been here? No. Red napkin instead of white. Oh, I got a red napkin. How come? I go, well, you're new and blah, blah, blah. And then the next 5 minutes, the manager comes over and says hello to you. And then they give you a free rib dinner. He said, which costs $5 to them, right? Right? He goes, but you come in and you enjoy that rib dinner. And then we follow that up by giving you 50% off the chicken dinner. Now it's a wash. And he goes, and then the third time you come in, and that's the pivot, he said, the acquisition jump is between the second and third visit. 40% of the time or less, you're likely to go back after a good experience at a restaurant. But at the third visit, it's 70%. Oh, wow. And so they want to make sure that you're going to get that third. And the third one was giving you a piece of cheesecake. And I said, $4, wash, piece of cheesecake, and I send you a postcard, which cost me $1. He goes, for $20, I get the customer that everybody else is trying to pay $1,000 for.
That's crazy.
And it really put it in perspective. And I'll send you that short, but it really put it in perspective. Because a lot of people are just throwing mud against the wall, hoping it sticks to do marketing, when it all really comes down to just taking care of the client. And think about it. If you went into a restaurant or any other business the very first time and they acknowledge you for being there once, they send the manager over to say hello to you. And we have restaurants in the area. Napoli is a great example. Osteria 500 over in Waterside and many others. I could just, the managers and the owners come by and say hello. It makes you feel good and special. And when you feel special somewhere, you're going to want to go back there. And after 3 times there, you're a lock. So I'm a Capital Grille fanatic. I love the Capital Grille. I bring all kinds of people there because I just like the guys. I know them now, like family. And they've supported some golf tournaments we've done and all these other things because then it goes both ways. I support them. They support us. And I've sent so many clients through gift cards and stuff that they get more business. And it's my pleasure. If they're going to have a great experience, why would I not want to give a gift card to Osteria or to Capital Grill or to Napa Lake?
Yeah.
I've done it for all those restaurants just because I really like the experience.
So going back to the restaurant experience. So I just actually had Massimo from Cafe Amici,
Yes,
the
great place.
owner of it. And he is always there. And every time that I go there, he is there. He's there greeting people. He knows their names, gets to know who they are. And he's built such an atmosphere just like that, that you do feel special when you walk in there. And the thing is like, you're right. It's like, I sit there and if I'm going to get that kind of experience, I'm going to come back.
Yes.
You know, and the thing is like, you know, you feel wanted, you feel like you want to be there. Can't tell you how many, like, especially, and I hate to say it, big chains, some of the big chains.
Or conversely, you know,
Yeah.
like, I won't give the whole name, but, you know, On the Water, and they have the name Jack in it, right? They will never, no one ever comes up to you there. No one ever says hello to you there. The bartenders, I was there the other day, and I take people there because you're on the water and it's really nice setting and it's beautiful, but there's no special treatment there. No. It's not, you know, so Cafe Amici, all these other restaurants, they give you a different experience. They don't need to have the very best location to get you to come back. No. In fact, some of the places I go to are places that you would never find unless I take you there, but you're going to have a great experience when you get there. Exactly. So it doesn't matter where it is, you know.
There's a little place in downtown, in the art district of downtown Bradenton, and it's a pizza place, and they make everything homemade, but it's family style. Nice. And so, but you wouldn't know it was there unless I took you there. Right. And so, like, I mean, the owner's from Italy. The owner's from Italy. He makes all the pasta homemade. He makes all the sauce homemade, everything. And so it's just like, but it's like a 4-course meal. So, you know, it's like, those are the types of places that I love. So,
well, we're almost out of time, kid. But before we jump off, why don't you give everybody your contact information, how they get in touch with you, and sure. We'll sign it out from there.
All right. The best way to reach me is you can either reach me by cell phone, so Spartan Capital Group, or you can also go to my podcast, which is suitedwarrior.com. You check that out, but you can give me a call at 443-668-5727. Or just check out our website. Best way to find me, again, is probably suitedwarrior.com. That has all my contact information on it as well. And so that's everything.
Well, I could talk to you all day, buddy. An hour went by very quickly, but I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Appreciate it.
And I'm sure we'll do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, this is Scott Perron. I've had a great guest today, the owner of Spartan Capital Group and also the host of a very notable podcast called Suited Warrior, Mr. Chris Kiblin. Thanks for joining us each and every time we do a podcast. Hope you learned a little bit of something. If you have any questions or comments, reach out to us, Scott@scottdperron.com, Scott@scottdperron.com. I'll get back in touch with you. And if you have ideas for a show, we'd love to hear those too. Have a great day and stay safe.
Cheers.